today you will interact with a context that we do not officially know the narrative for. A portion of it remains, the rest has vanished. So my attempt will be to reconstruct this that has disappeared, to say there was a time when giants existed on earth, okay? But to say that there was a time when the Nephilim were on earth implies you consider that there was a time when they were absent. The biblical intent is that there was a time when entities not native to earth arrived here, and it was during the period of their establishment that all this history occurred. Folks, so let's go. First, thank you for being here. We will now try to reflect upon maybe one of the most iconic subjects that exists to be truly reflected upon. However, the pertinent information regarding this, all this context, almost all of it simply disappeared. We are going to talk here about a character named Enoch. He is the center of this whole story. However, he was someone who lived around 14 or 15,000 years ago. He wrote 366 manuscripts, of which today we possess only fragments belonging to 2 of them. In 1776, a Scottish explorer, James Bruce, in Ethiopia, found parts of one of Enoch's lost books. In the year of 1846, Professor Sokoloff, while in Belgrade studying something unknown in the public library, found another fragment of another book of Enoch. Nowadays, 2026. What exists of Enoch is what today is called the Book of Enoch and the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. But understand, this compilation we possess today, the combination of these 2 so-called books, are not really books, but that's just how people call them. It's just a small part of a context that is vastly more extensive, more intricate, more bewildering to our present understanding. And that, quite simply, through the quiet burning and destruction of records over time, all of this has disappeared. It is always interesting for us to realize that we belong to a generation of beings who claim to be rational, but we create actions throughout the ages that have nothing of a minimally enlightened rationality. It is a rationality with a utilitarian view for that of which you are a slave, be it unconfessed interest, be it the interest of religious intolerance, whatever it may be. In 1453, when Spanish friars reached Latin America, and they encountered over 2,000 stone objects called the Mayan Library, which isn't Mayan. The Mayas got it from the Toltecs. One friar, Diego de Landa, asked the other if he understood what was written. The other said no. But both you and I are servants of God, they said. If we don't understand this language, it's the devil's work. Should we destroy it? Let's destroy it. 2 pieces of 2 stones remained. One of those fragments is incredibly famous, known as the Tzolk'in, which is called the Maya calendar, which is not Mayan, it is Aztec, but people call it Mayan. So observe how utterly foolish our way of acting is. Ah, no, but that's the people from the past. Today it's worse. That makes little sense. Prior to that, it is reported that Constantinople lost over 600,000 manuscripts in a fire. Before that, Pergamon's library was lost. Before that, in 221 BC, Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi ordered to burn all libraries that existed across Asia containing records older than 20 centuries. Before that, in 747 BC, Nabonassar, the Assyrian emperor, ordered the destruction of everything that existed of past records because he desired to be the #1 emperor in human history, and from one stupidity to another. A lot of material that today we stupidly refer to as mythology. Much of this ancestral context was lost. And what was produced by Enoch also went away. Why is it so annoying? This that we are calling cosmic revelation. Why is it annoying to structure the initial stages of a cosmic revelation that is still forthcoming? Because all of humanity is walking towards another direction, and you are alone against everyone, talking about something no one gets, that the majority refuses to acknowledge. So it's a big weight. And the strange thing is that if you are sitting here to listen to this, it is because each one of you is also someone who must not have good sense because you walk against the great flow of the human herd that does not want novelty, that wants things to remain the way that everyone is used to. So in this kind of talk, we will mix whatever history is possible, like academically considered, but we must discuss revelations we can't trust or take as facts. It's just revelation. It needs to be confirmed at some point in the future. We will talk about spiritual rumors. We will discuss recollections from certain spirits. That is to say, we are about to prepare a kind of mixture whose seasoning demands careful prudence from each and every one of us. First, so that we do not take everything that will be said here as absolute truth, nor dismiss it entirely, but rather as possibilities. Immanuel Kant always clearly stated something that we humans have never contemplated. A human being's intellect is measured by its ability to accumulate uncertainties, and not futile and stupid certainties that you don't know if they are true. When you collect a certainty that you cannot prove to yourself that it is true, this is either faith or it is a severe cognitive issue. Cognitive disorder, and all of humanity is addicted to cognitive disorder and to faith in collecting certainties, in quotes, that make us sleep better, feeling protected by something. But this certainty, again, if it's religious faith, must be respected. It's everyone's choice. But when it is a cognitive disorder, the famous "deceive me, I like it," in which you create a lie, transform it into truth, and spend your entire life worshiping this to feel better, this is a disease. It's already a psychic disorder, anchored in a cognitive disorder in which you create a false truth to serve yourself from it to feel good. And all of humanity, all of us, have in our DNA genotypes or sequences that we don't even imagine, that incline us towards the habit of choosing the easy way. Belief is a comfort. If someone says, "Hi, you're handsome," Am I? If I believe that, Rogério's brain, which doesn't know if he's ugly or handsome, but as the self who lives in it thinks or believes he is handsome, the hypothalamus produces pleasure peptides and I feel good, because then I think I'm good looking. But if someone says, hey, Rogério, you are extremely ugly, then it's the opposite. I feel not a pleasant feeling, but rather an unpleasant one, which causes my hypothalamus to produce peptides related to nervousness and irritability. That is to say, we humans sometimes feel fine when we hear a lie, an untruth. But if that matches my necessity, my deep-seated need, then it's fine. That is humanity's problem. We don't know how to distinguish well, since the filter we employ to determine our criteria for choosing truths, concepts, certainties, whatever, are not logical criteria, nor necessarily decent ones. They are convenient criteria so that we feel good. If it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It has led us to this failure from which today we, humanity, 8 billion human beings, unfortunately agree to every day we fail. We are failing for the simple fact of not having the ability constructed, established within our genome, within our psyche, to know how to guide our thoughts and emotions based on the interactions we experience throughout life. Reading a book is an interaction. Hearing gossip is an interaction. Attending a lecture is an interaction. Going to a speech, it's an interaction. A chat, everything is interaction. Today you will interact with a context that we do not officially know the narrative for. A portion of it remains, the rest has vanished. So my attempt will be to reconstruct this that has disappeared, something I have already done in some previous lectures about Enoch, but which I always refrained from discussing and sometimes prevented other personalities from supplementing or generate insights that I or the spirit animating me or others do not know. However, since this needs to be clarified somehow minimally clearly, not as truth, not as certainty, but as an uncertainty that future generations will have to check academically. So today we will speak openly, and I believe from my perspective, this is the final time. I will speak about Enoch. I've talked about it 2 or 3 times before, but today we are going to rip off all the veils a bit because it's necessary. Therefore, any assertions I might make here, you must allow for a discount, to consider them as prompts for reflection, as mere possibilities. And why is that? Because the mark of truth we humans don't have. No one has it. Only those who experience the facts. And even among humans, experiencing facts is very complicated. Why? Because human life is short. So there are other figures who experience facts and take longer to die. These are the ones who have available records, since human records have been wiped out, including by them. These other beings have records that still exist. So this one day should be clarified. Who are these others? We will talk about that now. So, all prudence. I have already done my part in asking for prudence from you. On my part now, I will be imprudent. And I intend to address this complex subject in the most unrestrained manner. What you will hear here, I state again. Part is recorded in the Bible, and some is recorded in other texts concerning Enoch. A lot is in both, excerpts from Enoch's manuscripts that we inherited as the human race. But there is also a lot of stuff that isn't anywhere. It is part of this effort of cosmic revelation to recover what was lost, what is hidden, and which will either be conveyed to humanity through revelation or it won't be. At least for the coming centuries. Later on, perhaps everything will be explained because everything is registered on some level, except, unfortunately, on our earthly level. So, why the title of the talk, this tedious and unpleasant name, The Mystery of the Tree of Life, and the Weaving of Metatron? Why this name, Metatron? The name of one of Yahweh's angels. And I will have to tell the story of how this being emerged, and this being came from Enoch. It is a very intricate narrative, highly complex, that is not described in the narratives of antiquity. In reality, not even Enoch himself could explain back then because not even he understood what was happening to him then. And this thing called the Tree of Life, which nowadays Kabbalah refers to, it is a modern construction from the 14th century on top of something old, and Metatron is the one who produced this ancient foundation. For us to understand then this link between Enoch, Metatron, the Tree of Life, and what the heck the Tree of Life means. What is the meaning or context or function of Metatron and of Enoch? We must take a dive into the past and understand the following context. About 23,000 years ago, an entire context whose existence we humans are completely unaware of, because we were kept from perceiving it. But naturally, there were a series of reasons I won't mention here. I refer to this in other lectures that are accessible on the platform called Orbum. But about 23,000 years ago, a figure, which to us will always seem like a fiction, called Shiva in Hindu mythology. Shiva is the same being who in Greek mythology is named Tartarus, is the same being that in Kabbalah is called Bina. This Lord called Shiva, who is one of the three beings in the Hindu Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. For us to understand these three beings, according to Aryan Hindu mythology, these three entities for billions of years have coexisted within this matrix where we reside. That is, in this actual reality in which we exist. According to the mythologies, these three beings discuss two things. First, which of the three, before coming to the inside of this creation, when they were outside and this creation did not exist, which of the three created this reality that we live in? And now that one fell inside and the other two dove in to help the fallen one, and all three went crazy, which are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The other topic they discuss is, of the three here, which one should rule? However prosaic or ridiculous it may sound, this is the substance. This is the flavor. This is the primary topic. From over 100 mythologies I've studied, and of other contexts that remain available, and much that has vanished also speaks about it, explaining this so-called blessed creation we exist in and its strange origin, but without judging if it's real or just imagination from everyone who lived on earth way back, because perhaps they invented all this. The mythologies speak a lot about it. Oh, but it must be one little book or so. No. In Aryan Hindu mythology, if you take the 18 Puranas, an A4 sheet of this computer paper that we use for teaching, written on both sides, is something over 1 meter and 20 centimeters, one on top of the other. And the Puranas form only one class among the diverse classes of Hindu books. That is a massive amount of material, far exceeding what is contained in this room, filled with paper. What remains? What got destroyed, we don't know. How could ancestral humanity invent so many lies like this? But the scholars, the current academicism says no, this is invention. This is poetic license from our ancestors. They invented it. People, it is not. The issue is very complex. Thus, these two themes concerning these three entities result in them existing for billions of years, coexisting and disputing with each other, because none can destroy the other. They were indestructible, at least along these 13 billion years. But they disputed everything, and due to a strange convergence I won't mention here, their dispute ended up happening on Earth. When they started this mess, Earth didn't even exist. The sun hadn't been formed yet. But by a strange destiny or designation, when the Earth emerged, when life on Mars got destroyed due to the so-called Nordic Ragnarok, the Earth was what remained according to the accounts, and they subsequently focused their attention on Earth, beginning to contest it. There are 300 million stories post-Ragnarok, which determined the reason why Earth would become the subsequent axis mundi. That means, in this entire creation, which point of our material universe would connect to the neighboring anti-material universe that the mythologies speak of? Believe it or not, it used to be Mars. When the so-called Midgard was destroyed in Ragnarok, and the axis mundi became the neighboring planet, which is Earth. But this is another story, assuming this is real and true. When those three entities focused their attention upon the Earth. In the last 23,000 years, who basically came to dominate the Earth, was a strange species that was previously irrational, us, pets of the gods, that lived here on Earth, but who were now rational and mated a lot, reproduced a lot, and Earth filled up with humans, with the FOXP2 gene, meaning rationalized humans. When this happened and these beings realized that those post-Eve humans, also post-Pandora humans, had developed an intelligence that even they themselves lacked, considering these entities are somewhat deficient or mentally impaired. I apologize for the terminology. The humans were not. Eve supposedly would have taken something forbidden. It's not that she ate an apple, she would have taken a drink, a potion that caused effects. Psychoactive in the sense of modifying patterns of consciousness, psychedelic effects, and it unlocked. A human genome code got unlocked, which was full of restrictions, and blocking codes were unlocked by a sort of a potion. And nobody, in quotes, expected that, and because of that, Yahweh, who is the same known as Brahma, became furious when he saw Adam and Eve. Because Eve, on top of having done something wrong, she also managed to persuade poor Adam to follow her. Women, so like this. When this occurred, or rather before Adam and Eve, emerged into history, Shiva was creating his headquarters. in the south of India. And today the south of India ends near the island of Sri Lanka, formerly Ceylon, but preceding the peak of the last ice age, which took place approximately 23,000 years in the past. When the planet was entirely frozen and started to thaw from that point onward, that is, since then, the ice has been melting away. Because the earth is heating up and the sea level is rising. This phenomenon has been ongoing for 23,000 years. Now, when this process commenced, Shiva decided to create his headquarters on earth in order to rule the human race. And thus, he manifested avataric or adyagic forms of his own being, established a kingdom in southern India, which at that time, India did not end where it ends today. There was a continent of Lemuria, continent Mu. It is fundamentally connected to the Hindu continent, and the culture that was present there is known as Kumari Kandam. And the modern archaeological processes, and this is science, on the present day, science already proves this. And records from more than 20,000 years show the Anahata expression. The expression Pashupati and other avataric expressions of Shiva, proving that the humans who lived there lived where exactly? In Sri Lanka, South India, and Kumari Kandan, which disappeared under the water. Everyone worships Shiva as the god, or rather the creator god of everything. The term God didn't exist at that time. The title God had never been pronounced or written by anyone. This little name, God, arose in Thrace, near modern Turkey, about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. Before that, nobody called anyone a god. No mythology speaks of God because that word did not exist at the time they were formulated. They all refer to powerful entities, creator lords, benevolent demons and malevolent demons, good beings, good entities, bad entities, but God only appeared later. So, the first fact, around 23,000 years ago, of the three beings of the Trimurti, the only one who had managed to establish a base on earth was Shiva. Vishnu then goes to Brahma and says, "Did you hear the latest?" No. Shiva has already taken over his peace. Then Brahma said, "And what will we do?" Then Vishnu says, "I'm doing nothing. I don't get involved in these messes of yours and Shiva's which have been going on since the beginning of the universe." Because in the mythologies it says when Brahma rebuilt himself, Shiva dove in and tried to destroy him. Since then, this confusion rolls on, and Vishnu is the being who tries to intermediate. I'm being simple here just to establish a framework for understanding. So Vishnu said, "I'm not going to get involved. But you, who are unable to bring forth your Adhyagna expression from your Adidaiva condition, these are Sanskrit terms to explain how this is described in Hindu-Aryan mythology, but explaining in a way so we can understand. You, who is holographic and soulless, you are not connected to anything that sustains you beyond the matrix in which we are currently inserted. You are unable to generate avataric expressions, so you must select or choose from within the species that you intend to dominate. individuals whom you select, and these individuals then come to represent you to the rest of the species members. So you must do this because Shiva, besides having already chosen some humans, he expressed himself, he appears in his avataric expressions. And there things are well established for him. So Brahma asked, "But Vishnu, you won't do anything?" "No, I won't." "And what should I do? You figure it out." So Brahma, over time, he said, "Well, I will have to choose humans, since Shiva already possesses his own people." Look closely. If Shiva already has a people who call him God, and this populace would be the ancestors of the Dravidian people who resided in Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, which is now Pakistan, the Pakistan and India border. So since Shiva already has his people, you need to choose a people, and you, via these two diverging paths, are going to dispute the planet. Brahma or Yahweh then decides to select his own representatives, and it is at this moment that the figures known as Adam and Eve come into being. But the Bible doesn't explain this. Other mythologies do. The Bible only says that there was a time on earth when there were sons of men and sons of God, meaning the sons of humans were in everything equal to their fathers. But the children of those gods, from one part, inherited the mother's genetics, but also inherited the genetics of the father who was not human, was a god. So the children of the gods were different from the rest of humanity. Although they might have resembled humans, they had talent, distinct capabilities. The Bible says that at that time, Yahweh created Adam and Eve. What is the problem with this choice? Because it's not just choosing like that. No, it involves you extracting your genetic material, marking the humans so that this human, if a DNA test is performed later on, this one is a son of Yahweh, a son of Yahweh's genetics. This perspective, these beings have, the Trimurti aristocracy lives off this gossip. So when Yahweh chose Adam, it wasn't just choosing like that. No, he had to take a big risk. What was it? We humans are capable of expressing our imprints, the genetic blueprint of every single one of us, holographically via spermatozoa and ova, which all transmit our genetic material. And our organism produces this for a long time until a moment arrives when the biological age for both male and female individuals ceases to replicate this, but throughout the entire life, this is available. Humans, biological beings, have this. The beings who live in this neighboring universe do not have it. They have a finite quantity of extracting their own mental schematics from themselves, through which the quantum signature of the personality of each individual is transmitted to the sons or daughters they engender, either through cloning or mixing genetics, and sometimes some of them having natural sexual relations with humans and others. At the time that I am discussing, what was present was something known as panmixia or panmixy. What the heck is that? Today, according to biological reasoning, only members of the same species have sexual relations with each other. At that time, the normal was everyone with everyone. No, that is promiscuity. No, it is not promiscuity. It's an issue of that era. As strange as it may seem to us, that's what it was. Today, no, but then there it was. The situation is not pleasant to witness, according to the values we currently possess. In this sense, Yahweh had to take a terrible risk. Which one? Yahweh, for 13.8 billion years, he was the first being to rebuild himself. And instead of progressing internally in his work, he was rotting even more. And at this juncture, Yahweh possessed only one set of genetic instruments to offer. He no longer had two. Either that succeeded or he'd be out of the game. And Vishnu was someone who said, listen here, either you do it or you don't. But Vishnu, lend me some? No, there's nothing to lend. You figure it out. And he did it. He chose Adam. What is Yahweh's issue? Yahweh chose Adam approximately 23,000 years ago. And who exactly was Adam? Adam was a human being, a descendant of a lineage that roughly 20,000 years prior to that time had received what? A genetic intervention within his genome, because during that specific period, another being known as Enki, a being who is not human, an entity of a species called by the Sumerians who lived in Mesopotamia, a Nephilim. And later, when the Sumerians were succeeded in Mesopotamia by the Akkadians referred to the Nephilim as Anunnaki. But Nephilim and Anunnaki are the very same thing, just two names called by two different cultures. What is the problem? The problem is that the Bible begins its history in the Old Testament by stating, right in one of its first paragraphs, there was a time when the Nephilim were on earth. It was during that period that all these narratives and so forth took place. If you take any Bible in English, in German, in French, in the original Hebrew, whatever it is written there, there was a time when the Nephilim were on earth. The Bibles that we have today, in the Portuguese language, the translation of this is, there was a time when giants existed on earth. To say there was a time when giants existed on earth, okay? But to say that there was a time when the Nephilim were on earth implies you consider that there was a time when they were absent. The biblical intent is that there was a time when entities not native to earth arrived here, and it was during the period of their establishment that all this history occurred. The Bible, in its original and honest expression, intended to say this. This is what is known in spirituality. However, the 73 volumes of the Bible, the 46 of the Old Testament and 27 of the New, they underwent extensive revision, translation, and adaptation. Therefore, there is a distortion even in what remained, which was not destroyed, as is the case with the Bible. But the distortion is pathetic. Why stress this? Because these beings, Anunnaki or Nephilim, they are the main characters in the history concerning the emergence of the human species, Homo sapiens. And for this very reason, the Lord Yahweh mentioned them immediately at the beginning of the Bible, stating that back then, these non-terrestrial beings were present on earth. When he reached the decision to pick some humans to represent his blood, not blood, but his genetics amongst the human race. From this view, Enki and Enlil were and are two sons of a being named Anu, And these three figures supposedly came from another planet of the Anunnaki settled on Earth. Anu returned, leaving his sons. And science sort of proves what I'm about to tell you all here. There is a book of Enki called the Lost Book of Enki, which was compiled by Dr. Zechariah Sitchin. What exactly is this book? It is a translation of Sumerian tablets discovered around the second half of the 19th century, where Iraq is now, where more ruins of the ancient library of Nineveh were, the old capital of the Assyrian Empire. Our friends here, Assyrians, Ashurbanipal had constructed marvelous libraries, and Nabonassar, the emperor, destroyed it all. Before Nabonassar destroyed it in 747, Ashurbanipal had built these libraries and the Sumerian tablets found in the 19th century. That's what it is. One tablet is the Lost Book of Enki. And what does Enki say in it? That it reached a point where the Anunnaki, or part of the Anunnaki, because Anunnaki is not just one people like us humans, that there is a federation of figures, sort of, involves a lot of things. A specific lineage of the Anunnaki, known as the Igigi, was sick of it and didn't want to do the hard work anymore. What heavy work? Extracting gold and sending it to Nibiru, their planet, because they had a problem there, which I won't cover. So, Enki's, his sister, Ninhursag, and his brother, Ningishzida, who is his son, to be more precise, known as Thoth, among the Egyptians. These three entities, 50,000 years in the past, gathered every humanoid couple present on Earth. Homo sapiens, Neanderthal, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, all our Homo sapiens cousins, and Enki imprinted his quantum genetic marker upon all these pairs to signify that the humans were descendants of him, descendants of the Anunnaki. In this package, the FOXP2 gene came from Enki to humanity, and the FOXP2 gene is the one responsible for the capacity that our neocortex has today to produce symbols. And symbols allowed the evolution of human rationality. Words, thoughts, numbers, all of this is the FOXP2 gene, operating according to the genomic game within the scope of the human neocortex. When they succeeded, this is described in the book. That book, The Lost Book of Enki, it was the Homo sapiens who responded most effectively and began to converse with Enki over time. And that is why the Anunnaki say that humans are their children. But no, rational humans, in fact, have this bias. Although Enki was not the sole creator of this, because Pandora, in another story, another mess unrelated to Anunnaki, also made something similar and better. But what distinguishes the offspring of Enki's genetic manipulation, meaning that specific descent, of Pandora? Pandora's brought rationality, but it also brought genomes of freedom. What I call struggling, resisting, of not wanting to submit to gods, of freedom. Whereas Enki's carried the FOXP2 gene, but it also carried a genetic predisposition for submission. Because everything Enki wanted would correspond to what we, if we were, for example, farmers, would promote in the horses on our farm, in the cattle, in the little dog, in the parrot, and the cat. We would introduce the gene, hoping that they would comprehend the commands we issue, but we would want them to be submissive. Enki treated humans the same way. They were irrational. He wanted to replace the Tayadigi with obedient humans, and he did this. And this is described in the Lost Book of Enki.
To continue watching this complete lecture, access our knowledge portal. Check out Orbum, the Cosmic Revelation streaming platform. Tens of hours of material available to broaden your awareness. With its own application, available for Android and iOS. Everything in one place. Every study and lecture related to the Cosmic Revelation brought together at one central hub, and there's more. An exclusive community where seekers gather to share knowledge, insights, and awaken together. Orbum, the Cosmic Revelation streaming platform.